Hello and welcome to Learning to Program with Python Lesson 4. Today we're going to be looking at conditionals using key programming concepts like if and else. So let's find out how we use it, why it works, and let's have some fun with it. Let's get started. So today we're going to be looking at using if, ELIF, and else. And by the end of this lesson, we should have a pretty strong understanding of how to use them in our programs. We use if to add conditions to our code. This allows the program to make a choice depending on the condition. This is something we do in real life all the time. If it is raining, take an umbrella. If it is 3:30, go home. We use else to mean anything else. So if the if condition isn't true, the program will always execute the else block. Again, let's take a look at some real-life examples. If it is sunny, go to the park. Else, stay home and play games. We only go to the park if it is sunny. If the weather is any other condition, we stay home. We don't have to specify which these other conditions are because we've said else just to mean anything else. We can use ELIF as a shortcut to mean else if. This allows us to add extra conditions to our code. But when we use ELIF, we have to specify the exact nature of these conditions. So, if it is sunny, wear a t-shirt and shorts. We've got a condition here. Else, if it is raining, bring an umbrella. Okay, we've specified a condition. Else, wear a coat. We don't need the condition here because we're using else to mean anything else. Let's take a look at some actual code here just to see how we use it in Python. Hours equals int input. How many hours a day do you play computer games? That's the easy bit. The user is going to input some data. We'll convert it to an integer, store it as hours. And now let's look at the conditional. If hours less than 2, print that seems a fairly healthy balance. Else, print that sounds like too much. So for the if statement, we start with the keyword, then we have a condition, and then for the syntax of Python, we finish with a colon. With the else statement, again, we have the else. We don't need a condition because it's anything else, but we do need the colon. So every time we have an if, an ELIF, or an else, we do need to have this colon at the end of the condition. We also indent any code that executes if the condition is true. And this is just how Python works out which code is connected to which condition. So this print statement here, this will only execute if this is true. This will only execute if the if condition is false, and then it'll execute the else statement. So the code is indented to show which condition it belongs to. Different programming languages do this in a different way. With Python, we need to have the colon at the end, and then we need to indent the connected code. So indentation is very important with Python programming. So if you have a look at this screen, you can pause it, but this shows you some of the operators that we need to use when we're creating conditions. We've got equality, which is a double equal sign. We've got not equal. We've got things like there are less thans and greater than and less than and equal to and greater than equal to and all the rest of it. So take a look at this. Refer back to if you need to, but make sure we get our signs the right way. I always tend to get this the wrong way around when I'm programming quickly. Make sure you get it right. All right, let's try out some changing the code slightly. So if you just add this extra line to the bottom and run the code, you'll find that because this is not indented, it will always execute. So the computer will execute either this line or this line, one or the other, and then it will always execute this. Because it's not indented, it always executes. Because we've finished the if-else block, and the computer is then continuing with the rest of the program. If we wanted this to only execute with the else code, we would need to indent it, just like we've done down here, yeah? So now this won't execute all the time. It'll only execute if this is false, then the else will execute, and then we'll have both these lines. Okay? So you've got to be very careful about how you structure your code. You've got to really think about the conditions, think about where your code belongs. Does it go to the if, the else? Does it belong outside of the if-else block? Again, as we go through some more examples, you'll get more of a feel for this. But always try the examples, play around with it, see what happens. So a good way to do that is just to experiment. Take the whole program. You can add some more conditions, add some more ELIFs to it if you want. Change the numbers, change the messages. Have a play around with it. See if you can get working the way that you want. If we take a look at this code, hopefully it's not too complicated. Again, we're just going to input a number of hours. If the hours is less than 2, so if this is true, it'll execute that. And then we've got the ELIF. ELIF hours less than 4. Well, if this is true, it'll execute that. And then if all the conditions are false, if this is false and this is false, it will then execute the else statement. Again, you've got to think about it carefully when you're plotting your conditions. Only one of these will execute. They're all connected into a block. So if this executes, it will then skip to the end of the program. The same for that. If the ELIF is true, it'll skip to the end once it's executed. If the if and the ELIF are false, it'll execute the else, and then it'll skip on and continue with the program. So out of these, only one can be true. And it will try them in order. It'll check the if, then it'll check the ELIF, and if there's an else, it'll execute that. But it only executes one, and it checks it one at a time. So think about it carefully. So some key points to remember. You must start an if, ELIF, else block with an if. You always have an if at the start. You can have as many ELIFs as you want. You might have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Depends. You don't have to have an else at the end, but if you do have an else, it has to be right at the end because it means anything else. Okay? Start with an if, then you can have as many ELIFs as you like. If you have an else, you only have one and it goes at the end. Okay? Hopefully that's clear. Let's take a look at another code example. Weather equals input. What is the weather like today? Well, if the weather is sunny, bring glasses. If the weather is cold, wear a scarf. If the weather is rainy, put on your wellies. Else, wear clown shoes. So you've got to be careful. Make sure you're using the double equal sign for equality. If you use a single equals, it'll think you're using an assignment status, and it'll think, so for example, this example, if you only had one, it thinks, oh, I want to put sunny in as weather, but that's not really correct because it's an if, and it'll crash. Make sure you've got the double equals so the computer knows you're going for equality. You're checking if one thing is equal to the other. Again, you can run this, play around with it, try different weather conditions, but again, it's the idea that you're only going to get one of these to execute, and then it'll move on and continue with the code. But again, it's making a decision. It's going to print out something different depending on the condition. And as our programs become more and more advanced, these conditions will become more advanced. They won't just be one print statement. We're just using a simple print statement just to kind of show you what happens just now. They will get more complicated and a bit more interesting. One of the things we often use if, ELIF, else, is to create a simple menu. So you have a look at this. We're going to present a menu to our user, and they're going to be able to select a complement, an insult, a proverb, an idiom, or they're going to quit. Depending on what option they select, whether they press 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 9, something different's going to happen. It's going to print something different. When you do more complicated programs, you're often going to have a menu involved. And you're going to have something that's going to look like this, except obviously the conditions are going to be a bit more intricate. But it's a good idea to play around with the idea of having a menu to see if you can get it working, to see how it works. A couple of interesting things. Again, we're using escape characters /n to say that we want to take a new line. We're also using an extra slash at the end of the lines. And that's just to tell the computer that we're continuing our code on the next line. Because I don't just want to have one big line of code. That's going to be really difficult to see and edit. I'd like my menu to look in my code like it's going to look when I print it out. So it's going to be on multiple lines, and we're just using that slash to tell the computer, don't crash. I am going to continue this code. It's just going to continue over a few lines. Of course, notice we don't have that final slash here because the code isn't going to continue. We're finishing the print, and then we're going to have a different statement next. Let's practice all this. Let's practice our if, elif, else blocks. Let's try making a calculator. Your program is going to ask for two numbers. It's going to give you a menu. And then you're going to select whether you want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide. And then the computer is going to do that. It's going to add the numbers together, print the answer, or subtract, multiply, or divide them, and again display the answer. If you know how to do that, go do that right now. If you're not sure how to get started, I'll show you some code on the next slide. So we're going to start just by taking in the first two numbers, fairly simple. Then we are going to display the menu, just like we did before. So you see they're going to input two numbers, then they're going to have the option of pressing 1, 2, 3, or 4 in order to perform one of the mathematical operations. And then we've got our conditions here in the next part of the code. If the operator equals 1, we're going to print the addition is, and then we're going to add the two numbers together and print the result. Elif the operator equals 2, so this is an elif because we're continuing. Remember, we only have one if, then we can have as many elifs as we want and then finish with an else if we want, though I don't think we need one for this program. Elif the operator equals 2, what are we going to do? See if you can continue the code using this example. Option number 2 is going to be a subtraction. It's going to be very similar to what we've done before, except obviously we're not going to be doing an add there. We're going to be doing a subtract. And then for multiplication, it'll be multiplying. Dividing, it'll be division. Have a go, get it working. So as you can see here, we're making the code very similar to the first if, except we're using elifs. And of course, we're just changing the symbol. So we've got the elif, operator equals 3, print the multiplication is, and then we are going to multiply it. Elif, the operator is 4, print the division is, and then just divide the numbers. So we take in two numbers, choose a menu option, and then perform an operation. If you want to make this a bit more complicated, maybe you could add some more functions. Add a 5 or a 6 or a 7. Maybe you could work out powers or square roots or do something else interesting that you might find on a calculator. Again, with Python, with any sort of programming language, it's all about experimenting, adding, seeing what you can get to happen. And that's the best way to learn. Okay, I think that'll be everything for today. We've been looking at if, elif, and else. Hopefully you've got a basic idea of how to do a branching statement, a series of conditions. And we'll continue this next week when we start to look at lists.
This is an S1 Perry production. Please like, please subscribe, click the little ringing bell thing if you really feel like it. Good night, and good luck.